There is a particular moment, you know it, when you are in a room full of people and something in your chest quietly moves away from all of them, not dramatically, not with anger or bitterness, just a small withdrawal, a tide going out without announcement. Your body is in the room. Your voice is doing what it is supposed to do. You are laughing at the right moments, nodding at the right moments, saying the right kind of nothing. And yet something that watches from just slightly behind your eyes has already left. It is looking at the scene from a distance no one else in the room can measure. You know this feeling. The way it arrives, not in empty rooms but in full ones. The way it finds you at the dinner table, in the middle of a conversation that should feel good, in the seconds after a laugh that did not quite reach whatever is behind the laugh. The way it visits on ordinary evenings when nothing particularly bad has happened. You are tired, but not from the day's work. You are empty, but you cannot point to the thing that emptied you. And sometimes this is the part that is hardest to admit. It is almost a relief. This familiar weight, you have stopped trying to explain it to anyone, including yourself. You have stopped expecting it to simply go away. You reach for the phone, not because you expect anything there. You checked it twice in the last 10 minutes and you know this. But the reaching feels like doing something. It feels like choosing, like there is somewhere to direct the attention that keeps turning inward towards something you would rather not look at directly. You scroll, nothing changes. You put it down, you pick it up again. This is loneliness, but not the kind most people think they mean when they use that word. Not the simple ache of a quiet house or a weekend with no plans. That kind of loneliness is honest and it knows its own name. It says clearly, I want company, and company can answer it. The loneliness I am describing is quieter and more patient. It does not announce itself. It blends into the background of an ordinary day and waits. It does not care how many people surround you because it was never about the number of people. It is the loneliness of a self that is not being fully met, not by others and often not by you. And here is what most people do when they feel it. They add more noise, more plans, more activity, more presence on the screen. The logic feels sound. If loneliness is an absence, then filling the absence should resolve it. But the particular emptiness that loneliness points to is not a hole that more can fill. It is a direction. It is an arrow pointing somewhere specific. And what loneliness has been trying to tell you, patiently, through all the noise you have stacked on top of it, is this: you have been missing from yourself. And you have been missing for longer than you realize. That is the message loneliness carries. Not, you need more people. Not, something is wrong with you. But, come home. You have been away from yourself. And the absence has accumulated into this feeling. The feeling is not the problem. The feeling is the compass. There is something most people will not fully admit, and it is this: they are afraid of quiet. Not afraid in a dramatic way. Not afraid the way you are afraid of something large and sudden moving toward you. Afraid in a quieter, more practiced way. The way you are cautious around a room you know holds something you have not yet learned how to face. You keep the door closed not because you believe in the danger, but because you have learned not to open it. And so the noise continues, not from cruelty, not from stupidity, as a long practiced and deeply reasonable form of management. You wake up and the phone is already in your hand before your eyes have fully adjusted to the morning light. Not because there is anything urgent to see. Some part of you knows this even as the thumb moves. But the space between sleep and full wakefulness is one of the few unguarded moments in the day, and something in you has learned that unguarded moments can be difficult. In that quiet, before the noise begins, something wants to surface, something that has been patient. And the phone is faster than it is. One small movement and the waiting thing goes back under. You move through the day, task to task, interaction to interscreen, the podcast in the car, the background noise at home, The way silence, when it arrives accidentally, is immediately treated as something to be solved. A few seconds of nothing becomes uncomfortable. A minute becomes almost intolerable, and so the noise fills it, and the thing beneath the noise continues to wait. This is not weakness. It was intelligence under pressure, when stillness held things that were difficult to bear, when the interior felt unsafe, when your own quiet company felt more like a problem than a refuge. Learning to fill the space was a form of survival. You learned to stay busy. You learned that the nivelis calm noise was preferable to the quality of silence that sometimes held very difficult things. That was not a failure. That was adaptation. But intelligence under pressure is not intelligence in peace. And what protected you in turbulence can become the very thing that prevents you from landing. Loneliness is not solitude. Solitude is not isolation. Silence is not emptiness. Staying busy is not staying on a mostamohi too, because without them the mind treats all of these as the same kind of threat and builds the same defenses against all of them, even the ones that were never threats at all. Solitude is chosen. It is inhabited consciously. It is the space in which something quieter than thought can finally be heard. Loneliness is what happens when you are cut off from that space, not by the absence of others, but by the presence of so much noise that the deeper signal can no longer reach you. Think of a fire built too large. It burns brilliantly. It produces heat and light that everyone nearby can feel. But the fire built too large consumes everything around it, the patience, the stillness, the space in which something slower and more lasting could grow. And when that fire finally exhausts itself, when the noise eventually runs out of fume, there is nothing left but ash, and the sudden recognition that you cannot remember the last time you simply sat in silence, cannot remember what it felt like before the filling started, cannot locate, beneath all the layers of occupied time, whatever it was you were so busy keeping away. That is what the noise has cost, not happiness. The noise can be genuinely pleasurable, but the capacity to be with yourself when the pleasure stops. Begin quietly. Tomorrow morning, before the font sound, allow 5 minutes of nothing, not formal practice, not productivity. Only this. Let the morning quiet exist without immediately filling it. Notice what wants to rise in that space. You do not have to meet it yet. Only notice that it is there, that it has been waiting, and that it is not as dangerous as the long habit of avoidance has trained you to believe. And once you begin to see what the noise protects you from, another layer becomes impossible to ignore. There is a version of you that most people know. This version is capable. It holds a conversation, reads a room, knows how to make others feel at ease. It has learned through long practice what to show and what to keep carefully out of sight. It is not false. This version is genuinely you, but it is partial. It is the part of you that has learned to function in company, and there is a great deal of you that this version never brings forward. You know the small adjustment that happens before you walk into a room, the gathering, the quiet decision made somewhere between the door and the first face. How much of the actual experience of being you will enter this space? Usually the answer is less than all of it. Usually the answer is enough to seem fine. Enough to seem fine. Enough to be present without being exposed. You perform fine so often that you have forgotten it is a performance. The word arrives before you have checked whether it is true. Someone asks how you are doing, and fine is already out of your mouth, complete and convincing, before any part of you had the chance to look inward and answer honestly. And then you move on to their fine, which is also already out of their mouth. And you leave the conversation having exchanged very little of what is actually present. And you wonder later, in the quiet on the way home, why you feel more tired than you did before. You smile when your heart is tired. You keep the conversation light. when something heavier wants to be spoken. You say, "I'm good" at the table, and then sit alone with what good was covering, with no one to say it to and no way to say it even to yourself, because the habit of management has made you almost a stranger to your own unedited interior. This is not weakness, it was intelligence under pressure. Reading what is safe to share is a genuine skill. You learned through real experience that certain parts of your inner life make others uncomfortable or make them uncertain how to respond or close the conversation in ways that leave you more exposed than you were before you opened it. And so you learned to offer enough to make the interaction feel real, but not so much that it becomes a risk. That was reasonable. That was learned. But there is a difference between choosing what to share and never being able to offer the real thing at all. There is a difference between appropriate privacy and the particular loneliness of someone who has performed fine for so long that they have lost easy contact with what the true answer actually is. Being seen is not the same as being known. Being known is not the same as being understood. Being understood is not the same as being truly met. Each of these is its own experience, and each requires something the performance is designed to prevent: the willingness to be present with another person from the actual ground of what is true, rather than from the managed version that makes things easier for everyone in the room. Think of a river forced underground. The water still moves. It has not stopped being. Water has not stopped moving toward wherever water always moves. But without light, without air, without the open channel that allows a river to be fully itself, it flows in darkness, under pressure, through passages too narrow for its actual volume. And eventually that pressure finds expression in unexpected emotion, in sudden withdrawal, in the weariness of someone who cannot explain why they are exhausted when nothing visible be the cause. You are not tired because something is wrong with you. You are tired because something real has been moving underground for a very long time, and it takes considerable effort to keep it there. Can you allow one true thing to be said in one conversation this week? Can you resist the reflex to soften what is actually present in you, to offer the edited version that requires less from the room? Can you let one person, just one, hear what the honest answer actually is, even briefly, even imperfectly? Begin quietly. You do not need a declaration. You do not need a moment of grand honesty. One true sentence offered to one willing person in one ordinary moment. Notice what that costs you. Notice also, carefully, what it returns. And once you see what the performance costs, a deeper layer rises, one that has nothing to do with other people, one that lives entirely in the space of being with yourself. There is a question that most people, if they sit with it honestly, would answer with some discomfort. Do you actually enjoy your own company? Not the distracted version of being alone. The version with the podcast and the scroll and the background noise that fills every available pause. Not the version of alone that is just a held breath between social events, but genuinely, quietly, with no performance to prepare and no audience to calibrate for. Do you find yourself to be someone whose company you welcome? Most people, when they sit with this honestly, discover something that surprises them. They find that the voice that runs when no one is watching is not kind. It is not patient. It replays mistakes. It makes comparisons that always favor someone else. It has opinions about your choices, your worth, your direction. And those opinions are rarely warm. And yet this is the companion you carry into every room. The voice that is present in every silence. The one that is with you always, without exception, without vacation. If this were an actual person in your life, speaking to you the way this voice speaks to you, you would not call that relationship companionship. You would recognize it for what it is. And so loneliness in its deepest form is this: being in close quarters with a version of yourself you have not yet learned to be genuinely present with, not unloved by the world around you, sometimes deeply loved, but fundamentally a stranger to your own quiet, a visitor in your own interior, Do not hate yourself for this. Hatred is another cage, and you are already carrying enough. What I am describing is common in ways the surface of ordinary life conceals, and it did not arrive from weakness. When the interior held things that were difficult to bear, when stillness surfaced what was painful, turning away from it and toward the external world was entirely reasonable. But you can only live turned outward for so long before you begin to lose the map of what you turned away from. And then the loneliness deepens, not because people are absent, but because you are. Solitude is not the same as being with yourself. Presence is not the same as attention. Knowing your preferences and habits is not the same as knowing your actual interior. Most people who believe they are self-aware have only mapped the surface, the tendencies, the patterns, the opinions. But the interior is deeper than preference. It includes what you feel before you act. It quickly embodies knowledge which arrives before the mind has time to construct a story about it. It includes what is present in the quiet that has been consistently filled before it had a chance to speak. Think of a mountain in early morning, before the light has fully arrived. In the darkness, the mountain appears to be one thing, solid, uniform, defined simply by its outline against the sky. But as the light grows, the mountain reveals itself in layers, texture, variation, a landscape of its own. Rock and shadow and small, unexpected growth in places you would not have predicted. The mountain did not become more complex as the light arrived. It always was this complex. The light only made the complexity visible. You are not simpler than you think in insufficient light. And the one who has been keeping that light low, quietly, without full awareness, has often been you think. You have only been seen when you are white. Not from cruelty, not from self-destruction, but from the long practiced habit of turning outward, where things are more manageable, where the terrain is familiar, where you have been rehearsing longer. You were never too much, you were never too little. You were never the wrong kind of person for a life that asks you to know yourself. You were only someone who had not yet learned that the interior, when you stop fearing it, is not a threat, a home. The one home that nothing external can give you and nothing external can take away. Begin quietly. Sit alone, fully alone, with no background sound for 20 minutes. Not to accomplish anything, not to think productively, only to be in your own company without immediately escaping it. When the discomfort arrives, and it will arrive reliably within the first few minutes, do not turn on sound. Only notice the discomfort. Name it as precisely as you can, because what you can name, you begin to understand. And what you begin to understand, you can learn to inhabit rather than flee. And once you begin to inhabit your own quiet without fleeing it, something shifts. You begin to see that every ordinary moment of your day was already asking you to practice this. The monk does not develop inner steadiness only in formal practice. What is built in the quiet hour must be carried into the marketplace, the difficult conversation, the afternoon when patience is thin and the old habits reassert themselves with particular force. The quality you cultivate in solitude is tested and deepened in the texture of daily life, and the loneliness that visits you in ordinary moments, in the elevator, in the car, in the pause between one task and the next, is not an interruption of the practice. It is the practice, arriving in its natural form. You are in line somewhere, waiting. Everyone around you has a phone in hand. You have no particular reason not to reach for yours. But today, just today, you leave it where it is. And in that small, unremarkable choice, the mind begins its protest. It invents small urgencies. It suggests you might be missing something. Offers boredom as evidence that the phone would have been the better choice. This protest is not real urgency. It is the mind disclosing that it has not yet learned to be in a moment without managing it, without inserting something between itself and the bare experience of being here. You can eat a meal alone without a screen in front of you, fully alone with the food and the room and whatever is present in you. You can walk a familiar street and actually look at it the way you would look if you had never been there before and everything deserved attention. You can sit in a waiting room and let the waiting simply be waiting without making it into a problem that requires distraction as its solution. These are not spiritual exercises in the elevated sense. They are not spiritual exercises in the elevated sense. They are experiments in something very simple and very difficult, being in your own life as it actually happens, rather than slightly beside it, managing it, waiting for the moment when it becomes something you can finally be fully present for. Here is the distinction the practitioner learns. Sometimes only after years of training, there is a difference between enduring a difficult position and inhabiting it. Enduring means the mind is somewhere else, waiting for the difficulty to end. Inhabiting means the full attention has been brought into the present moment. Not because the moment is comfortable, but because attention is the one resource that can be deliberately placed anywhere. The one who endures is always slightly elsewhere, counting time. The one who inhabits is here, and from here, genuinely here, even in difficulty, something becomes available that was not available from the posture of waiting it out. This is what loneliness is asking you to practice, not to rush past it towards something better. Not to endure it until company relieves it, but to inhabit it, to bring your full attention into the experience of being with yourself, even when that experience is uncomfortable, even when the voice inside is not kind, even when what rises in the quiet is something you would rather not meet directly. You are not searching for comfort in that encounter. You are searching for presence, your own presence. The one thing that loneliness, in every form it takes, has been quietly asking you for. Can you sit with yourself as you would sit with someone whose inner life you genuinely find worth knowing? Can you ask yourself questions with that same quality of interest, rather than immediately evaluating what you find? Can you be curious about your own interior, rather than managing it or judging it before it has fully expressed itself? Can you offer yourself the quality of attention you have been waiting for someone else to offer you first? Begin quietly. At one point today, just one, when the impulse to reach for something external arrives, pause. Stay in the moment for 30 seconds longer than feels comfortable. In that 30 seconds, ask yourself one question only. What is actually here? Not what should be here, not what you wish were different. What is present right now? In the body, in the breath, in the room. Loneliness is not your enemy. It never was. It is a signal. It is what the interior uses when it has been unheard for long enough. And like all genuine signals, like the body's discomfort in a position held too long, like the restlessness of a mind that knows it is not engaged with what actually matters, it becomes a teacher the moment you stop trying to silence it and begin, instead, to listen. Most people spend great energy trying to eliminate this feeling. They add people, add plans, add activity, add noise. And sometimes this genuinely helps. Connection with others is real nourishment, and it matters. But the loneliness that returns even in good company, the loneliness that finds you when the evening without explanation, the loneliness that has outlasted every attempt to outrun it. That particular loneliness is not asking for more people. It is asking for you. You are the home you have been searching for in other people's presence, not entirely. No person is complete without others, and no person is complete without others, and no person should live as though they are. But the foundation, the center, the still point from which everything radiates adds the attitude it always was. And it is built not in grand moments of transformation, but in small and ordinary acts of return. The morning you chose 5 minutes of nothing before the noise. The meal you sat with in actual silence. the one true sentence you spoke when the managed version would have been easier. The 20 minutes you stayed in your own company without escaping. You remove the noise and something quieter becomes more repetition of worry, but the voice beneath the worry, the one that has been waiting patiently for the traffic above it to clear. You release the performance, and the energy that went into managing your presentation becomes available for something else, for actual presence, for actual rest, for actual connection that does not leave you more depleted than before. You stop fleeing the silence, and the silence ceases to be empty. It becomes spacious. It becomes the place where something genuine can finally surface. You stop waiting for someone else to make you feel less alone, and you discover that the loneliness had a door all along. It was facing inward. You were approaching it from the wrong direction. Think of the practitioner who has trained for many years in the discipline of remaining still. They do not carry that stillness because the world has become less disruptive. The world remains exactly as it was, uncertain, loud, full of everything that has always made stillness difficult. But inside something has been built, not a wall. Walls are for those who are afraid of what might enter, not armor. Armor makes you heavier without making you safer, but a center, a place that can be returned to regardless of what is happening at the periphery, a home within the breath, within the quality of attention that can be placed deliberately anywhere, even in the middle of noise, even in the presence of another's absence, even in the longest silence, even when the loneliness visits as it sometimes will, because it will, and finds not a self that flees, but a self that is genuinely present, that can say, I know this feeling. I do not have to fill it. I do not have to explain it. I can be here with it until it tells me what it actually came to say. That is the inner fortress, not a place of defense against feeling, a place of residence in it, the place where you are no longer afraid of your own quiet, your own interior, your own company, where you have become, slowly and without fanfare, someone whose presence you can trust. Let your life become the evidence, not your declarations about what you are working on, not the version of yourself you show when someone is watching, but the life you actually live in, the moments when no one is tracking your progress, the quality of your own company in a quiet room, the steadiness with which you sit in a moment that asks nothing of you but your presence, the small and daily choices to return to yourself rather than away from yourself, when away has always been easier. That is where it begins. That is where it has always been waiting. In the quiet you stopped running from. In the solitude you stopped treating as a problem. In the company of yourself, which was never nothing, which was always, if you were willing to stay long enough to discover it, a place worth coming home to.